Teofimo Lopez stepped into the ring that night with the weight of expectation pressing down on his shoulders. He was fast becoming one of boxing's most electric rising stars, known for his flashy knockouts and charismatic confidence. Already touted as a future champion, Lopez had run through his opponents up to this point, knocking out most of them in spectacular fashion. His power, speed, and swagger had earned him a growing fan base, and this bout against Masayoshi Nakatani was expected by many to be just another step on his road to a world title shot. The fight took place at the MGM National Harbor in Oxon Hill, Maryland, on July 19, 2019, as part of an IBF lightweight title eliminator. The stakes were high. Whoever won this fight would earn a mandatory shot at the reigning IBF champion. For Lopez, this was supposed to be a statement performance, a display of his talent on the big stage. For Nakatani, it was an opportunity to introduce himself to the American audience and prove he was more than just a tall, unknown contender from Japan. Not from the very first bell, it was clear that this wasn't going to be the typical Lopez showcase. Nakatani, standing nearly 6 feet tall, had a significant height and reach advantage over the 5'8" Lopez. He used it immediately, pumping his long jab and circling away to maintain distance. Lopez, known for his explosive counters, tried to time the jab and step inside with hard right hands. But Nakatani's unorthodox style and constant movement made it difficult for Lopez to establish rhythm. The first couple of rounds were tactical and tense. Lopez landed a few body shots and tried to close the gap, but Nakatani kept him at bay with his reach and awkward timing. Nakatani, despite not being well known in the U.S., came into the fight undefeated with a record of 18-0 and had held the OPBF lightweight title. He was a seasoned professional and not intimidated by the occasion. What he lacked in name recognition, he made up for in determination and experience. As the fight progressed into the middle rounds, Lopez began to find openings. He adjusted his footwork, feinted more, and started throwing more combinations rather than looking for one big shot. In the 4th and 5th rounds, he landed a few solid right hands and even stunned Nakatani briefly with a sharp uppercut. But each time he landed, Nakatani would come firing back, sometimes catching Lopez with clean counters of his own. It was becoming a battle of wills and attrition. Lopez's father and trainer, Teofimo Sr., could be heard shouting from the corner, urging his son to stay focused, to go to the body more, to break down the taller man. Lopez followed the advice in spots, but he also looked a little frustrated. At times, his usual ease in the ring, his ability to control the pace and dictate the exchanges, was being disrupted by Nakatani's awkward rhythm and stubborn resistance. Nakatani's jab was a constant problem. He threw it in different rhythms, sometimes snapping it, sometimes pawing it, sometimes doubling up, and he used it to blind Lopez before sneaking in straight rights down the middle. Although he wasn't landing massive shots, he was landing enough to earn respect and keep Lopez honest. By round 6, it was becoming apparent that Lopez was in for his toughest test to date. He had never gone beyond the 7th round in his career before, and now he was being pushed into deep waters. Nakatani, meanwhile, looked increasingly comfortable. He was gaining confidence with each passing round, standing his ground more, and even taunting Lopez a little by keeping his hands low and flicking out combinations from odd angles. Lopez responded with sharp counter-punches, trying to time Nakatani's entries. He landed several powerful overhand rights and uppercuts when Nakatani dipped forward, and some of them visibly rocked the Japanese fighter. But to his credit, Nakatani never looked in serious trouble. His chin was solid, and he absorbed some big punches without ever going down. What made the fight so compelling was that neither man was completely dominating. The momentum kept shifting. One round Lopez would land the cleaner, harder shots, The next, Nakatani would control the pace with his jab and land sneaky right hands in the 8th and 9th rounds. Lopez began to look a bit tired. His footwork wasn't as crisp, and his mouth was open more often between exchanges. Nakatani kept coming forward, relentless and unbothered. He didn't look flashy, but he was consistent. He stuck to his game plan and refused to let Lopez dictate the fight. Commentators began to note how Lopez's punch output was lower than usual, and how Nakatani's volume and awkward angles were making it difficult for him to get into his rhythm. There were moments in the 9th round when Nakatani actually backed Lopez up, landing a few right hands that forced him to retreat. It was something fans hadn't seen much before. Lopez on the back foot, adjusting, trying to weather the storm. This wasn't the typical Lopez fight, and the fans in attendance could feel it. There was a tension in the arena, a growing awareness that this was more than just a routine fight. This was a gut check, a battle that would reveal what Lopez was really made of when things didn't go according to plan. Round 10 saw Lopez dig deep. Despite the fatigue, despite the frustration, he came out with renewed aggression. He landed a vicious right hand early in the round, followed by a left hook to the body that echoed through the arena. Nakatani stumbled slightly, but quickly recovered. He came back firing, landing a stiff jab and a short right hand that forced Lopez to cover up. The exchanges were fierce, and both men had their moments. Lopez's power was still evident, and he landed the more eye-catching shots. But Nakatani's consistency and volume kept him in every exchange. In round 11, the pattern continued. Lopez threw in bursts, explosive, dangerous flurries, but Nakatani answered with long jabs, lead rights, and the kind of persistent pressure that wears on a fighter. He didn't have one-punch power, but he had stamina, discipline, and a chin that absorbed everything Lopez threw at him. As they entered the 12th and final round, there was uncertainty in the air. Most observers had Lopez ahead on the cards, but it was far from a landslide. Nakatani had made every round competitive, and his durability and work rate couldn't be ignored. Lopez's corner urged him to finish strong, to leave no doubt. He responded by stepping on the gas, throwing heavy shots, and trying to hurt Nakatani. He landed several right hands, and the crowd roared, sensing the urgency. Nakatani, ever the warrior, didn't buckle. He returned fire, landing his own shots and ending the fight on his feet. The final bell rang, and both fighters raised their hands, knowing they had just gone through a grueling battle. The decision came in, and Lopez was declared the winner by unanimous decision. The judges scored the bout 118 to 110, 118 to 110, and 119 to 109, all in favor of Lopez, but those numbers didn't tell the full story. The fight had been far more competitive than the scores indicated. Nakatani had pushed Lopez like no one else had before. He had taken Lopez 12 full rounds for the first time in his career, and had landed more punches than any of Lopez's previous opponents. Lopez, though victorious, didn't celebrate wildly. There was no backflip this time, no over-the-top celebration. He looked reflective, maybe even a little disappointed. He had won, but not in the dominant, emphatic way he had hoped. It was a reminder that at the elite level of boxing, things rarely go perfectly. After the fight, Lopez admitted he hadn't fought his best. He spoke about the challenges Nakatani posed, particularly the reach and the awkward style. He also talked about the mental pressure, feeling like he had to deliver a spectacular performance every time out. He acknowledged that he had learned a lot from the fight, both technically and emotionally. He realized that boxing isn't always about knockouts. Sometimes it's about grinding through tough nights and finding a way to win. For Nakatani, the fight was a career-defining moment. Even in defeat, he had earned the respect of fans and fighters alike. He had shown that he belonged on the world stage, and that his toughness and technique could trouble even the most hyped opponent's dot in the months that followed. The narrative around Lopez changed slightly. He was still seen as a future star, but now there were questions about how he would handle elite-level competition. Would he be able to deal with slick boxers, with taller fighters, with guys who could take his power and keep coming? Those questions would be answered in time, but for now, the fight with Nakatani stood as a crucial chapter in his development. It was the kind of fight every young fighter needs, the kind that tests resolve, reveals flaws, and builds character. Lopez would go on to silence many of his doubters in his next bout, where he captured the IBF lightweight title by knocking out Richard Comey in stunning fashion. That win reignited the hype and set the stage for his massive upset victory over Vasily Lomachenko. But it's hard to imagine those later victories without the hard lessons learned against Nakatani in many ways. The Lopez-Nakatani fight represented the heart of what boxing is all about. It wasn't the most glamorous fight. It didn't end in a highlight reel finish, but it was real. It was raw. It was a young fighter being forced to dig deeper than he ever had before. And it was a veteran contender showing the world that he was more than a name on a record. It was about perseverance, about grit, and about the respect the two fighters earned from each other through 12 rounds of war. Fans who watched that night saw more than just a victory. They saw growth. They saw struggle. And they saw a glimpse of what greatness looks like when it